What is up, Generals? We're back with Ultimate General Civil War, and this is the J&P Rebalance Mod Confederate Major General playthrough, and we're currently on J&P Rebal Mod 1.26. I think it's 1.26.1, but I think the points don't show up when you go through. Okay, so let's take a look at the state of the Confederacy before we jump into the Battle of Chancellorsville. We'll be taking I Corps under General Fiasco. This is because I Corps is a very accuracy-focused corps. We have a lot of rookie units who need to level up, and they're going to get the experience here. This is going to be a great battle for that. They have a bevy of light infantry units, and 4 of them, all in the kind of generic light infantry style at 400 men. 1 counter-charging battery, and then the remainder counter-artillery. I Corps is intended to be kind of a defensive corps. This is the anchor upon which, or the anvil upon which the hammer of 3 corps will fall. So you'll notice we only have 1 2-star unit. The remainder is all 1-star, or 2 2-star units, one of them being a grenadier or a marching unit. The remainder are all 1-star units, and many of them are fairly fresh, fairly inexperienced. By comparison, we have 3 corps, much more experienced. We have 2 2-star units wielding Spencer revolvers. I'm quite intrigued, quite excited to see what kind of damage and havoc these guys can get up to when they get on the field, so that should be pretty good times. We also have a 2-star grenadier unit with 3 corps IDIV, so this is going to be a nice kind of counter to all of that. Additionally, we have in 3 corps the 2 sniper units plus the Grenzers to really kind of spot and really ruin the enemy's day, so to speak. We're bringing along the Brute Squad, the Cavalry Brute Squad, which is not including Nathan Forrest's 3-star cav unit. These are ones we've grown on our own, homegrown melee cav units. And quite a bit of 2-star infantry in 3 corps. We've been leveling it up for a while. We're bringing 3 corps because he has the Innovator cover perk and also the mobility perk. We have the option of jumping on CSRs, which I don't think for 1,500 of them is worth 20 rep points. The Lamats also not really worth it in my mind. They're not better enough over the Colt Revolver to make them worth the jump, and they're also not worth the spike in rep points, because whatever I can get in the next round of rep buys, the opportunity cost is I buy them now, and I don't have access to those later. So these are the 2 corps we're bringing. I Corps for kind of holding action type stuff, and 3 corps for kind of more dynamic movement and aggression, that kind of deal. So let's jump in, and without further ado, I'm not going to waste you guys' time. We're going to turn the mic off, and we're going to do this with a post-recording audio. Last time I tried to record a major battle, which was Second Bull Run, live. The thing ended up being 4 hours. I don't think anyone watched it, and if they did, they just clicked through and got the Cliffs Notes. So let's save both you and me the time of all that nonsense and do a post-recording. The Union Army is looking pretty healthy. They've got a mid-70s, which is their manpower, and that will be what they have at Chancellorsville as well. Training has been hovering in the low 40s for a while now, and I think a lot of that comes from the fact that I wiped the Army off every map. But their armory has been slowly creeping upward, and this is of concern, although it's also a boon to us as the player. So it's a concern because the enemy army is hitting quite a bit harder. They've got 20-pound parrots are starting to show up, high-end carbines, high-end sniper weapons. These are serious problems that cause some real guff, real casualties to mount up quickly and more quickly than I can kind of react to them. But it's that many more guns that we capture. I have got 2 brigades of Spencers, and I didn't buy a single one of them because I can't. So so you've got that. I mean, there's pros and cons to that armory score creeping up, obviously. It's going to require me to be a little more cagey in terms of the manner in which I play, and we'll kind of take things from there. Now, they are receiving a bit of a debuff, net 10% down from where they would be because of the two side battles. I repeat my initial opinion at the end of whatever the last one was, Rio Hill. Wasn't worth it. I would rather have just come into this battle without having fought Rio Hill. The manpower, the money, I didn't need it. And the extra 5%, they gain more from reinforcements than they're going to lose from the debuff. So skip that battle entirely is my recommendation until it gets nerfed into the dirt or rebalanced in some other way, because right now it is just not a good time. Anyway, cats, I will see you guys on the field. For right now, this is Fiasco signing off, and I'll see you in a couple of seconds, obviously. But until then, ciao. Hey, just kidding about stepping away. So I haven't actually tried playing the battle yet, but I've sort of taken a look at the opening scroll about how large this battlefield is, and I've made a quick change on the background rosters. So we're still going to be using Johnson for 3-Corps, but I've swapped Robert Lee in for Fiasco as the commander of I-Corps, and otherwise the unit rosters haven't changed at all. Rob Lee is identical to Fiasco except for the first tier perk. The first tier perk for Fiasco is the accuracy perk. The first tier perk for Lee is the mobility perk. Otherwise, he still has the plus experience perk, which is excellent for a corps filled to the brim with brand new, fresh troops with limited experience. And Johnston is going to be making great use of the cover perk, I hope. But the big thing is that there's a lot of maneuvering that needs to be done in the opener here. And I think relying on the unperked mobility of Fiasco's core might make some of the timing on this a bit tight. So I'm going to turn the mic off now and jump into the battle, and I'll see you guys on the field. All right. I know I keep saying I'm going to turn this mic off, but every now and again, there's the opportunity to speak to the viewer with full control of the camera and the mouse, and I can't really turn that down. So I'm going to quickly sketch out the concept of operations, and then we'll see how close I get from our initial plan to what ends up happening on the field. So in this scenario, you've got some Union forces dug in and around this area, and then obviously in their camp where they're setting up. And the game kind of gives you the idea of, like, why don't you occupy this general position and duke it out that way? And that's like a viable way to play the battle, especially if you have long-range artillery. You can shatter them and then move up and take this position, etc., etc. However, they get reinforcements from here. They get reinforcements from here. And then they get reinforcements from here. And the game even tells you about meeting these reinforcements, so that when you had that opener where, like, hey, they marched away along this road, but when they realize they're under attack, they're going to come back. So the game tells you to meet these reinforcements. I am very confident in our ability to get troops in place to meet those reinforcements when they get here. I'm less confident about this. That's obviously pretty hard. And then I'm of moderate confidence, depending on how the engagement here goes, of our ability to get troops over there. But the broad intention is to engage in a general fashion here in the opening, in the middle, to shatter as much of their artillery in this first day of battle as we can manage, and then as well to certainly cut off and destroy this task force, and then to damage, if possible, this task force. And if I have an ability to get troops in position to engage this task force, and then do whatever damage we can to it before the time ticks out on the day. Now, because it's the Rebel, we have a little bit longer than the vanilla game to accomplish some of these things and to get troops in position, which we're going to need because everything moves a little slower, which is partially why I brought Lee along for this battle. So let's give this a shot. If you've watched Panda's video, you know the general scope of what I'm trying to accomplish because that's more or less what he did. But you'll notice that I didn't bring anywhere near the same number of skirmishers, and that's going to hamper my initial opener for the engagement. But I'm not as good at micro as he is, and my troops are much more junior as well. However, I have put significantly more points into recon, so I have a pretty good level of confidence in my ability to track, how we're doing. Have I missed my timers? Like if this bar jumps like a lot of blue all of a sudden, I'll have a pretty good idea that maybe I missed it. So, third time's the charm. I mean it. We're turning the mic off. I'll see you guys in post-recording. We're on the field, so I can't stay on the field, but this is Fiasco. I'll see you guys in a few seconds. Bye. All right, generals. So there's a bit of a frago from the initial order. So I liked the opening we did to this video, so I'm not going to re-record it, but we're on take 3 of Chancellorsville, and I'd forgotten something else entirely. So when you fight the battle at Chancellorsville. So I've already fought it once, and it was fine. It was just messy. You get dropped immediately into another battle that I had completely forgotten about. And so rather than try and make that work, we're going to jump in with an army better equipped for the battle that's here, and then also an army better equipped for the battle coming up. Because you don't get a chance to go to the camp screen after Chancellorsville before you go into whatever the hell that one's called. Salem Church, I think that sounds right. So we have the battle plan is still more or less unchanged. I Corps and 3 Corps are going to be the main forces going into Chancellorsville. As you can see, neither one of them is really intended for dynamic movement. The cavalry units I took out for more artillery. This is a battle with a lot of weird lines of sight issues that kind of make it hard for that make it frustratingly hard for me to shoot things I feel like I should shoot, or should be able to shoot. So we're bringing more artillery, more skirmishers for scouting, etc., and there's never really a good chance, short of a couple of units here and there, to run down fleeing units because they're all fleeing towards the center for the most part. So with all of that in mind, we're going to go ahead and deploy these 2 corps with just lots of artillery and lots of infantry. As the usual light infantry package is coming, I Corps is going to be the lead force, with 3 Corps being the flanker force. And then I've set up Lee's command, 2 Corps here. You get to bring 12 units to Salem Church. So we have some very experienced infantry, and that's because there's so few of them. I need to be able to rely on them to kind of kick some butt and take some names. We're bringing a Napoleon unit to shut down any infantry attacks from the enemy. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit larger for infantry work. And then bringing a Blake and a 20-pound battery in order to shut down the artillery that comes along. And we have 2nd Tennessee Light Infantry armed with non-scoped Whitworths, and they're going to be hunting artillery and supply wagons, and just making a general nuisance of themselves on the flanks. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in to the recording, and I'll see you guys on the field. Okay, so I know I talk in a previous recording of this. I want to keep that part in the video. So this is where one of the reinforcements is going to come in. I'm going to keep that part in the video so you guys can see where I was in terms of my headspace going into this battle, and where we've landed after a couple of iterations. Now, I'm not going to make you guys watch. I don't have them recorded anymore. All of the different variations that I've played of the battle. We're only on take 3, so this isn't like I've played it a shitload or anything. But in my experience, you have plenty of time. So if you're playing the Rebel, these are some things you want to think about. You have plenty of time to send your troops up to intercept these troops that come in the corner. and these troops that come in the corner, or in this corner. You can also easily get a force to intercept these troops. The issue you have to consider is, will you be able to engage them effectively given the rules of the rebalance when you do? And will you be able to... So let's go ahead and... All right. Chancellorsville day 1. Will you be able to get there with enough troops and enough guns? And that's the big consideration, to white shield off their artillery and everything else. And the consideration there is that with the 400, so with the extended range of muskets, where you were able to safely engage kind of right around here in the 300 era, the vanilla game where muskets shoot 300, and they were powerless on the fence line here to engage you. And the fence line wasn't really all that good a defensive structure anyway. The new paradigm of the rebel upends a great deal of that. At 400 range, they and the fence can engage you out to about here in the woods. So you don't really have an opportunity to put together any kind of viable fighting line, 2 brigades of infantry and some artillery and then some skirmishers behind it to defend, to engage here. And this force ends up getting chewed up because they're just under constant pattering fire from this direction. And then the troops here, unless you can evict them from the fence line, are making it very difficult. You have a very narrow corridor up through which you can get reinforcements or supporting troops, etc. And with the speed, the slow speed at which cannon moves in this game, you also have to consider that. So you've got plenty of time to safely get troops here and to safely get troops here. However, you can get troops here. I'm not so sure you can get cannons here, and even if you could, they're going to have 3-star infantry and a lot of cavalry in very close proximity, and I don't think that things are as lethal or effective as they were in the vanilla game at shutting down this front. So my initial very aggressive, ballsy plan is being replaced with a more conservative approach. And that is we're going to use all of the troops that we have here to initiate the engagement and try and force our position along this line. Or actually, we're going to try and get up along this line. So we're going to try and kick them out of this position and then place fire. So I would like to get troops up into this position as well, and theoretically think about trying to extend out to here. I do not want to come anywhere near taking the flag. The objective for day 1, then, instead of cutting off and destroying in detail all the individual sub components of the Union Army on this battle, instead becomes set up your forces basically along as much of this position as you can manage to hold, set them up here, and as the army, because the army that forms here and forms here will begin to approach and try and take the flag. So if you can kind of hold here and blast them off into the road, they'll be fighting in the open for the most part, and you can just blast the shit out of it. Now, I know some of the balance changes have been designed to disincentivize cowering in the corner with our artillery, but I mean, this is the reality: is that I'm fighting a little over 2 times my number, and the vast majority of them are 3-star units that don't seem to get, well, not 3-star, but there are a lot of 3-star units. There's a lot of 2-star units, and obviously the AI doesn't care about reinforcements because we'll just have more later. So every 2-star casualty really hurts me, and every 2-star casualty is mildly annoying, I suppose, to the AI. So I'm going to go ahead and issue my initial orders to give you an idea of what we're trying to accomplish. So we want we are actually going to use the forts. The forts have been majorly reworked, as has been discussed previously, and they are now very effective. And they open some new avenues of tactical, your thought process here. But they can also be a bit of a trap because they expend, especially these ones down here, extend a single brigade over a very long front. So you got to watch out for that too. So with that being said, I will see you guys in post-recording. This is too long an endeavor for me to do all at once, but we're going to do day 1 today. We're going to do day 2 in the next video, and then we'll do Salem Church, which is, as far as I'm concerned, day 3 later. All right. Oh, also, when you get to the end of this battle, you don't lose. You don't lose or draw or whatever if the time runs out and you haven't taken the flag. You have a couple more hours. And then if you do take the flag, there's a 20-minute countdown. And then when that countdown runs down, if you're holding the flag and holding the other 2 points, the battle auto ends. So if you want to stretch the clock, that's what you got to take care of. And one of the things that really cost me in my second attempt at this battle was I didn't know that. And so I kept pushing some things I didn't need to be pushing when I could be sitting back and blasting away, and knocking them out of the flags that way. So keep that in mind when you come to this battle in your playthrough. And like I said, I'll see you guys in post-recording. Fiasco, signing out. Okay, guys. So here we go. This is Chancellorsville Day 1. At the time that I'm recording this, it's early April, and we're looking at the second major week of coronavirus stuff. So I'm hoping that this video finds you and your loved ones doing okay. I'm hoping you guys are safe and eating and have a place to stay and all that kind of stuff. This is a pretty scary time. I think the last video I was a bit cavalier about kind of what it was going to be, but I didn't really know what it was going to be. So this is me tipping my hat to all of you. I hope you're okay. Chancellorsville was kind of an uphill battle to get recorded. And I think there's a couple of factors that tie into that. So one, the lines of sight on this map are really weird and wonky. Some things that I feel like you should be able to see, you can't. And you can't see as far as I feel like you should in some instances. It's just kind of weird. It's fine. I mean, watch the vision around 5th Alabama Light Infantry here. Like kind of what he's able to see and not doesn't seem to make sense. And the lines of sight don't go as far as I feel like they should. And I don't know, whatever. It's a weird map, and I can complain about that all I want, but it's just a thing. It's on me to kind of get used to that fact. On the flip side, the entrenchments here are actually quite good. They're very useful, and they allow you to really economize the forces you've got by spreading out your troops and allowing a smaller number of soldiers to sort of garrison or defend a larger amount of terrain. And you'll see me make use of them over the course of the whole battle, especially here in the opener. Actually, I'm pretty happy with this opening. Chancellorsville went well. It was hard to find time to record. You'd think, like, with my state's under a stay-at-home order, so you'd think I have all this time that I'm home. And I thought that as well. I was like, oh, good, I'll have a chance to get ahead on my recording schedule, and we'll be able to go from there. What I ran into is, at my job, I have been helming a project. This is it's not my idea, but it's my baby at this point. To modernize and digitize a lot of our marketing materials so that our sales team can do their thing over Facebook and LinkedIn and whatever. Most of our sales folks are on the older side, and they're much more of the, face-to-face, let's get a coffee, do a contract on the back of a napkin and a handshake kind of mentality. And that project has obviously gone from being kind of a nice sideshow to the main event lately. So let's talk about the game for a minute. This opening here, the idea is I have plenty of time to get troops that come on later and move them to the appropriate places to intercept approaching Union troops. What I need to do now with these soldiers is cut off and destroy as much as possible of the 3 to 4 brigades that come and meet you in this opener here. Now, I think in this instance it's 4, but I've seen it be just 3. And you want to cut these guys off because typically They are the ablative shield that stands between the Confederate Army and the bulk of the Union artillery in this opener. So you'll see 34th Georgia is just getting hammered right now. And I don't react quickly enough, in my opinion, to that fact. But they're getting smashed by a lot of cannon. And I'm not... And you can't approach that on foot and expect to be okay. So I need to use these troops to cut off these soldiers here so that I can have easier access to the cannons later on. So you start getting a little bit of reinforcements, and eventually you'll get your whole army. And so you use the opening troops to bottle up and destroy the Union army that comes to meet you. And I use these trenches here kind of as a way to sort of hit, hopscotch through the battlefield or initiate engagements, because I want to, instead of just charging, the trenches all have, or the fences in this instance, they all have a bit of melee resistance. So it's like a damage resistance on melee. It's cover for melee. So I want to use the trenches instead of just charging. Johnny would be happy. I am pretty intentionally courting melee in a lot of these instances because my troops can handle it. Now remember, I Corps is predominantly composed of newer soldiers. These are one-star recruits who've got 1 or 2 battles under their belt. Their stats aren't fantastic. And that's intentional. There's no version of this battle that I didn't suffer a lot of losses in. So we walk away from Chancellorsville with about 15,000. That's before medicine. So, I mean, it's on the high end, right? But we're mauling these troops. We're mauling these Union brigades. And then that's okay. So, and the fences are helping us do it. Admittedly, we outnumber them pretty significantly. But take a look at 38th Georgia. They're down 300 and change, I think, off of their starting block size. Now, they took off 100 guys for their detached skirmishers over at the farmhouse by the northern VP. But that gives you an indication of the kind of damage that artillery is doing in relatively short order. And these are in cover, too. Now, they're, you fire enough guns, even if it's onesies and twosies, you're going to knock out that whole unit eventually. But it's an indicator of the kind of damage you court if you don't knock out these guns ASAP. So the overwhelming majority of my strategy in day one, and I think I talked about this in both of the pre-battle components, is to destroy as much of the Union artillery on day one as possible. Infantry brigades, if I knock them out, great, cool, whatever. I don't know if they have a lot of cavalry that comes in on day one. Initially, there is some that approaches off the side of the board as one of the second component of day one, but I don't think there's any that are actively here now. I think this is just foot troops. And so if I knock out brigades of infantry, fantastic. That's always a good time, but it's not necessary for success. It's not necessary for victory. It is necessary for victory to knock out artillery. So I retire 34th Georgia off the line. They have a supporting or garrison role the rest of the battle, but they single-handedly soaked up all that artillery fire. So it sucks for them. But the overall army is looking okay as a result. Not the sort of mentality I tend to like to have, but, sometimes you got to just do what you got to do. So now that the trenches or fence lines have largely served their purpose, I'm, as you can see, kind of abandoning them, but not really. I'm sending skirmishers to occupy these fence lines. The skirmishers aren't intended to do any actual fighting. They've been nerfed into the dirt to the point that they can't, and then B, that's still not really their purpose. They're just making sure that I have visibility on that swath of terrain. And you can see I've got 5th and 3rd Light Infantry. I've got them kind of scouting about, trying to figure out where the enemy army is. Now I know, for the most part, where they are, but I need to have eyes on, because I can't do anything with the artillery that eventually joins my army until I have a good visibility on their cannon. And so specifically 3rd North Carolina, their entire mission at this moment is simply to get visibility on some of the cannons. That's it. That's all I want them to do. And they're, as you can see, struggling to do even that. So that's great. We have this one brigade of Union infantry off to the south that's kind of gotten itself cut off, and I'm trying to wipe them out. But I'm okay with dedicating 2 brigades to do it. So they got cut off from the rest of the army, and so I'm able to bottle them off and make sure they can't get anywhere and then destroy them. And that was the objective. That was the whole point of what I was trying to do, was cut those troops off, run them down, and then destroy them. We mauled another one in melee, and then Ross is doing more or less fine. He's obviously taken pretty heavy losses, but it's the AI. They don't care. So, Knife, whatever, this guy down here. That's the state of the Union right now. The other state is that they've got between 4 and 5 batteries of artillery at their position to the north, and I'm trying to get eyes on it, and I can't. So your goal on day 1 is to defang as much as you can manage Union artillery. If you kill some infantry, cool. You want to destroy whole units, obviously. You want to, take out the artillery, because the artillery is going to be what prevents you from maneuvering freely on the battlefield on day 2. There probably is a way to win this on day 1, but I'll be damned if I know what it is. And one of the other issues that I'm going to run into, and this is very much self-inflicted, but I spent all this time at Fredericksburg whining about. As you can see, most of the troops from Second Corps are what I use to flank to the north of the Union position. So I spent all this time whining at Fredericksburg that I wasn't being challenged. I only took about 6,000 casualties. It wasn't hard enough, right? So I turned up scaling for this battle. In one of my attempts, I turned it up to 25% bonus on top of whatever they would normally have. So that was, as you may imagine, pretty hard. That was about a 92,000 strong Union army going into that battle, and it was a lot. So this is a way to handle day 1. What I do is I set up an artillery park. I occupy these forward positions, set up an artillery park, and then use the fact that 100% of my artillery at this point is counter battery, and I use it to smash the ever-living bejesus out of the Union until such time as I am able to advance with infantry and engage. And what I'm doing with 8th and 7th up there is one of the units that eventually comes in off the board edge is this random artillery unit that I know I'm pre-positioning myself. All right, sure. It's a bit gamist, but this battle is kind of a bear without it. Or even with it. And you cut off that one artillery unit. If you don't, it makes quite the nuisance of itself. And then I have run into the issue that they're in the top right, where I believe Meade's troops come on the board. There's kind of a blind spot that they can retreat into that you can't see. And if you advance to try and engage in that blind spot, so 6th Grenzer is, I'll come back to that in a second. 6th Grenzer is vital in this battle. They play an absolutely vital role, and it's because they have the spotting perk at tier 2. So they inflict comparatively few casualties. They don't really do a whole lot of actual fighting. They do some. But for the most part, they're really here to see things. And my gosh, the impact they have is so exponentially larger than their manpower or kill KD contribution would imply, that they're probably my MVP. The 2 sniper units, the long rifles and the Texas boys, they get, 5,000 kills each or something stupid like that. Okay, fine. They're also MVPs, but they're expected to be MVPs at this point in time. They wipe out batteries. Their whole thing at this juncture is basically counter battery, and that's what they do. They're counter battery. But 6 Grenzer gives me so much visibility to the map that without it, I don't know what I would do. So I know that recon as a stat and recon as a perk choice is not sexy. It's not. But man, the dividends that it pays for being able to know where you do need to be and where you don't need to be, et cetera, et cetera. It empowers your counter battery artillery to really take off. Scouting troops of some kind or another, I have not been giving them the kind of due I think they're worth. So in general, I think that is a far more impactful unit than you can bring on the battlefield than you might otherwise appreciate. So Meade's troops, top right corner. There's a blind spot. If you move to engage in that blind spot, they're gonna shoot out of it, and you're in the open, and so you're just kind of shit out of luck. If you bring artillery, they're in a blind spot, so you can't see it, so you can't shoot it. I've tried bringing over skirmishers. They can't see far enough, and if they try and advance to see far enough, they get shot, so that's not really good. There's nothing you can do about it. So what I changed in my mentality with the top right then is it's a holding action. All those troops need to do is keep the Union bottled up in the north. Now, in this particular iteration of the battle, it ends up being pretty bloody. Unfortunately, I don't get the artillery piece in the first volley. So usually you can knock out the battery, and at that point in time, your casualties will be fairly light, because then you just got infantry firing into your troops who are in the woods, and they aren't. But in this instance, they got the cannon, and I couldn't get at it. So that sucked, and it cost those particular brigades a lot. But again, they, for their sacrifice, they lost, well, I mean, combined, I think you'll see in the second part of the video, but they take pretty heavy losses, but they hold up 5 or 6 brigades all by themselves. So it's a worthwhile trade on a macro scale. And we're moving into the level of the campaign where that's the kind of thought process you have to have. Is, what works at a macro level. So here, for example, it's expensive to approach this trench line, but I need these cannons white shielded or dead as soon as possible. And I figure I'm in the woods. I've got artillery eventually coming online. I've got snipers online, but I can't wait. I can't wait for all 4 or 5 of those batteries to just keep on blasting away while my cannon takes approximately 17,000 years to get online. Yeah, and this battlefield is big enough that even like a James kind of struggles to reach out far enough to hit all the things it needs to hit. So in this instance, like advancing with infantry and engaging the artillery en masse like that was the only answer I'd come up with. And I've tried this opening, like I said, this is my 3rd take, so I only tried it twice. But additionally with Ruger, like he's a problem obviously, but if you have 3 brigades of infantry plus the snipers all shooting at him, even dudes in trenches will eventually be like, well, maybe not. And then at that point in time, you've got infantry firing on artillery in the open. I have 1st sharpshooters in 4th Texas blasting away on these units. So we de-gun them pretty quick, and only one of them gets away. And by get away, I mean it routes far enough back that I can't get eyes on it, even with 6 Grunzer. So, and I don't so much do anything here in the opener. Like the opener, as far as I'm concerned, is really all about getting your troops into position and making it not horrendously expensive to exist in that position. And then day 2 is when you kind of bring in the hammer and destroy things. But as you can see, we're 10 minutes out from the close of the opening phase of the battle, and I'm still moving troops into position because, again, thanks to the reval and everything else, you have plenty of time to get your guys on pace. So the troops who are eating the majority of the damage here are the soldiers in I Corps. That's not great, but they're all 1-star troops who are up to this task, no question about it. And I am more than willing, I mean, if I had to take it anywhere, right, this is the place to take it. This was a very cold decision to use I Corps for this portion of the battle, and to compose I Corps of this kind of troop. But I mean, there's no way around it. You're staring down the barrel of twice your number in Union soldiers and 3 times the number of cannon I have over the course of the 2 days. So they outgun me 3-1 in terms of artillery, and they outman me 2-1. So, yeah, I mean, just, it's not great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have some troops from 3 Corps, who are going to move to the top right to intercept Meade. And then I'm going to have the remainder of my troops in 2 Corps deploy to the north of the Union position here. So we are not going to try and intercept Hooker's troops. We are going to wrap up the Union line. And you'll see this all come together in the next little bit. But everything I'm doing in this first opener is just about getting into position, initiating a general engagement with Union troops, and trying to limit as much as possible. And I mean, given the casualties I've suffered thus far, it's not a super successful endeavor. Limit as much as possible those losses. All right, so now we're in the second phase. So we have 2 hours in game, which is not that much time, to inflict as much damage as you can see. Look at how far forward I have to push 6 Grunzer, and this is with the spotting perk and I think 6 or 7 points in recon stat, and I still can't see shit. It is insane. And you'll see this over the course of the day a couple of times. I'll have the game paused, and things that I could see when I initiated the pause will all of a sudden, the game will be like, just kidding, you can't see those. I don't understand. I don't get that. It's like it's just all over the place. So day 2, the AI kind of gets a reset, and at the initiation here, it gets kind of aggressive, which is sort of to be expected. It always does that. So we'll just kind of have to address that when we get to it, I guess, right? You can see me kind of bifurcating off the infantry from 3 Corps, figuring out who goes where. There wasn't really a great deal of aggressive or intentional thought around that. It was just kind of like, you go here, you go there, whatever. But I needed a significant enough weight of troops such that when they come down, like I'm pinning a significant portion of the Union Army into a vice-like position so that it's being attacked from one direction by me, and then its only option is to retreat in the direction of me, because typically the troops will retreat away from wherever the damage they're taking is coming from. So at this point, I also redeploy 1st VA and 4th Texas away from this engagement, because I'm not getting the line of sight I need on things. I'm not able to visualize what I want to be hitting, which is really bothering the crap out of me at this point. And I got luckier in my second attempt at the battle in terms of line of sight on the middle, but it seems unreliable, and I can't quite kind of make it work. But the second that I get that line of sight, I pause the game and I tell my skirmishers to hold position and figure out what they're doing, because I just need to knock these damn batteries out. They're so close to being gone, and is what it is. I think part of it is I got 6 Grunzer there in the middle, in that copse of trees. So I detach one of the skirmishers to go stand in the recon point. That'll help, but unfortunately it doesn't help enough in terms of spotting that one unit in the corner. Weed's battery, this guy gets off into the woods, and I can't ever get close enough to get him anymore. So we get him eventually, but not because of artillery or counterfire. He goes off into the woods and just does a good job hiding over there. We use the skirmisher infantry to kick some of the Union troops here in these trenches out and try to advance. We're trying to worm our way forward and see if we can't see things. I've got spotters flagging the positions of enemy artillery, etc., for counter battery missions for Confederate artillerymen. And you're starting to kind of get a loose idea from a visual perspective of what I'm talking about when I sketch out my offensive in mind. So I tried intercepting Hooker's troops that come from the top left, and it was a bloody mess, and it cost me way more than it was worth. And I've tried meeting these troops. I believe they're Schimmelpfennig, that come in from the mid left near Cross, left that road there. And I mentioned it in the pre-battle, but you just can't get troops. You just can't get anything over there enough. I do end up moving soldiers in this particular iteration of the battle up there, but it's specifically just so I can try and get a piece of artillery. And as you can see, I'm continuing to have to push my artillery further and further north to try and get closer and close that gap on the artillery. So the ranges being as short as they are, even though they've been extended since the older versions of this mod, it's still quite painful in terms of positioning and the time lost in moving these batteries. So you get to a point where, like, once I'm happy with the positioning of a battery, I leave it there. But Fitzhugh, for example, is enough batteries that can draw a bead on them that, like, that's all she wrote, right? As soon as I can see him, it's a 162 strong battery in the open. Yeah, that's not going to last long. You have as well the artillery from 3 Corps moving up to the right relative of I Corps. And there, I had initially created a full-on artillery park here in the south, but the issue I had was that, like, it's too much power in a very small area, and it's limited in its ability to affect the overall battlefield. And so I decided instead to kind of create 2 artillery parks that would support each other, but wouldn't concentrate all the fire in one area, because I really do want to cast that net of I can smash your cannons as wide as possible, but I don't want to spread it out so much that it's ineffectual if I can. And I suppose in the real world, this was always the issue that armies had with artillery, is there's this constant back and forth of, do we have detached or spread out artillery, or do we have it concentrated? And generally, I think concentrated has been the correct answer, but at what level? And grand batteries for the entire army keep everything too compact. But farming batteries out to the individual level just mean that they're all ineffective when they get there. So Knapp here, this battery moving off to the left near Cross, at the top left of your screen right now, his moving there, I couldn't detail an artillery piece to get there in time, so I used the brigades of infantry that were guarding kind of my left flank to engage and knock out that battery if possible. But one thing I like about my position here is that the troops are all able to more or less defend themselves. There's enough supporting artillery fire and overlapping fields of infantry fire that when and if the AI gets kind of ballsy and charges, they because of the AI's nature, I guess, they kind of do it in onesies and twosies, and so that's, you know, all she wrote as far as that's concerned. So yeah, we've talked around the setup. You kind of get what's going on here. The struggles I've faced, the challenge this battle puts in front of you is, can you put enough supporting fire deep enough on the Union camp at Chancellorsville to affect it? And the Union Army around Chancellorsville has done a very good job. And I mean this to the mission designers, and now that the fence lines are useful and stuff like that, the Union Army around Chancellorsville has done a really good job of pushing out its defenses far enough that its artillery centrally can support its troops at any one of these fence lines or even deeper into the Confederate positions, but you can't typically reach them. So the infantry are doing their job. They're screening appropriately for the heavier assets that need that protection. So the Army here does a great job. The Union Army does a great job defending its important asset, which is the cannons. And it is a real bear to get troops online to deal with them. That's the challenge you're going to be faced with. So you can kind of see what's going on. We're now waiting for the reinforcements to come online, and we only have an hour at this point. So this gives you an indication of how tight time can be. But everything's in position. All the artillery, my supporting artillery for the attack, my blocking troops, my attacking soldiers, etc., etc. We've knocked out some of their artillery, but they got more coming. And that's the nature of this battle, is you're just continuously fighting off wave after wave of reinforcements, and you've got to be ready for the fact that new troops are coming in from all kinds of weird directions. Second MVP of the battle, though, is the detached skirmishers of the 45th South Carolina. So you can't see them just now on the screen, but to the left, near Knapp's battery, what's happening with them is I'm trying to get them out of the way of line infantry, so line infantry can fire on Knapp. What ends up happening, though, is 44th South Carolina. What ends up happening is they cross the road and get north of the Union position and continue to feed me. So there we go. There's the first bit. So they get north of the Union position and continue to feed me reconnaissance information for the rest of the battle. And man, second MVP of the game is... So the two MVPs of this game are skirmisher units who do nothing but look at shit. I want to preface how important reconnaissance is to victory. Yeah. Oh, Howard, not Schimmelfemming. Okay, whatever. So Union troops here. And then kind of what do they do? So I'm struggling to just take out Knapp's battery. That's really all I care about. At this point, I want to just blast off Knapp, get him out of here. I'm doing everything I can to try and knock out this battery, and I just miss it, essentially. And that's on me. It's user error. I don't know. I could have brought some batteries up there or something, or Napoleons or something. But whatever. In a certain juncture, we just need to get this thing recorded and out the door. And, it's been long enough that you guys haven't had a video. So, that was the thought process. That's the battle. That's the maneuver. We'll kind of see things here develop here in next little bit. I was talking briefly about real life. I'm good. Everything. My job is entirely remote regardless. You can see the bits of Hooker's troops coming in from the top left there. My job's remote. My school has gone to an entirely remote schedule for classes and whatnot. So I'm able to kind of do my best hermit impression and call it a day. So there's the light skirmishers. They're gonna continue to be just an incredible asset for the next 57 minutes of this battle. They do great work. And they don't really fire much of a shot. I think they fire a couple of times at a supply wagon, but that's about it. So good. So you can see the offensive beginning to kick off here. These troops haven't had a chance to rest, but that's why they're all 2-star troops, and why I've worked on stamina as much as I have, is they haven't had a chance to rest and they haven't needed it. They've been marching since they got here, and now they're in position and they can launch immediately into the attack. So I love me 1-star infantry, right? I don't care about losing 1-star infantry. I don't care about sending it into the blender or the grindstone or whatever, because I know I can rely on it in a pinch to stand up and do a good fight. I also love me 2-star infantry because you can just ask it to do a little more than you could with someone else. So I make that mistake. Here you see this. I make the mistake of trying to engage the troops in the top right, and just don't do it, man. Stay in your trees, and maybe bring over skirmishers or snipers. I think that there are 1,000 better places and better things to do with snipers than use them there, but I can understand why you would want to use them there. So I've got them supporting my hammer, because I'm using I-core as the anvil and I'm using 3-core as the hammer. So I've got the snipers there supporting my anvil, or my hammer. I think that they're useful there because they're going to kick Union infantry out of those trenches that much faster. And these woodland defenses, so if the fence lines are fine, as defensive entrenchments go, the woodline ones are excellent. And I had artillery and snipers and flanking infantry, etc., all blasting away at those guys in the north and east of the Union position, and they were still only just able to do anything. So thanks to 44th South Carolina, I see their artillery. I see Martin and Harrington or Hammerton or whatever. There's the artillery unit that spawns by itself randomly. So these are just Huntington. These are opportunities for you to just run these things down. And so immediately, having accomplished their goal, I then deploy 1 and 4 light infantry off to the rear, basically to capture run behind the Union Army where the artillery is unprotected, and smash it. Just smash the crap out of it. But there's a moment where I need to think about this. Patrick, 3-star infantry comes at me. That's the thing. Hooker's command is mostly 3-star infantry. So when they come in like a hammer. They come in like a wrecking ball. So I use 1st Virginia and 4th Texas as like a spoiler against them for a second, and then they go off into the cannons. End result, I think we get 1 battery. We don't get the other one all the way before the timer runs out. We do really well. I think that these guys being back there makes a big difference in the battle. And you can kind of see where I'm trying to develop the Confederate position. When this is done, they're going to be in the open, in and around their camp. And if I had, seriously, 30 more minutes in game to blast away at them in the open, I think that day 2 would go much, much smoother. In the event I don't, it's just the way that it is. Okay, I see what happened. So I clicked on 44th South Carolina's detached skirmishers. I thought I clicked on don't shoot, but I ended up clicking on go back into your parent unit. That's what happened. All right. I was confused as to why they were shooting. So they managed to capture that supply wagon, which is always a good time. As you can see, we're getting more and more of our artillery pushed up. And this is because the infantry is occupying those positions. If I didn't have infantry keeping them safe, the artillery wouldn't be able to engage, not effectively, without taking fire from those trenches and the wood lines. So where 38th Florida and I think it was 26th Virginia is... you'll see them probably in a second if I scroll down. Yeah, no, never mind. I wrote my past it. All right, whatever. The artillery can't get close enough to hit the park without getting shot at by defending infantry unless you kick the infantry out of those trenches. That's it. So, yeah, we're doing the thing, kicking them out, fighting, all that kind of stuff. This is getting, I'm excited. Like I'm very eager. I'm very excited during all this moment in time here. And I'm having a good time. I had a good week at work, and a good week just in life in general relative to, all the rest of this nonsense. So good is a relative phrase here, but, yeah, I was in a good mood to try and knock out this battle. I had recorded 2 different iterations. Both were just bloody messes. And just in both instances, I'd tried after a long day at work and a long day at school, and I'd just been on. You guys ever have like a day where you have to be on all day? I was long teleconference and long meetings and just producing work content, whatever. And then I'm doing that for 16 hours or whatever. And then I'm trying to record these battles, and I just do stupid shit. And like, I'm tired and I'm stubborn and I'm bullheaded about some stuff that's clearly not working. And I'm like, well, let's just keep going anyway, because if we get there eventually, it'll be fine. And it costs me, like, at one of these attempts, I had 23,000 Confederate casualties just because I was a dumbass about how I approached the battle and stuff like that. So I'm going to use the rest of the time here. You can watch the video and you'll see what's coming, but we're coming up on the tail end of the content just because I'm going to break off day 2, which I've already recorded. It's a fantastic battle. It's a bit bloody, but day 1 I think goes exceptional. I think day 1 goes great. I have losses. Yeah, absolutely. It's Chancellorsville and the Confederate side of it. I don't see how you don't take losses in this battle. I've noticed that when I play, when I'm tired or when I'm distracted or when I've just mentally been exhausted from other things in my life, I don't play well. And I don't play to the caliber that I would be comfortable recording. And I've noted, and then that's just a mental capacity thing, right? Like that's just where you're at. When I play, when I'm even a little bit rested, when I'm even a bit fresh, I'm more cautious in my approach. I'm more analytical in the good way about my ability to figure out when and where to attack what. And it's a difference of how I perform on the battlefield. It's a difference of how I perform in other games. I've been playing. I think you guys have. I've talked about other games that I play. PlanetSide 2 and Battlefield 5 and all these shooters that are they're the same thing. You have to be analytical. You have to be engaged. You have to be making split-second decisions and stuff like that. And there's just times, especially lately, and I was talking earlier in the video before I got distracted with work stuff or battle stuff. There's been times lately where I've been on so much with work and everything else that I haven't really had the chance to kind of decompress. And usually I take a couple hours, I go to the gym, or I go for a long walk, or I go to the park and, that kind of thing and decompress. And then I come back and I record. I have kind of a whole routine. I record usually on Tuesdays. I do post-recording on Wednesday, and then I try and post the video Wednesday night. And last couple of weeks with Corona and everything else, my company's been jumping through all kinds of hoops, trying to get some stuff done we need to revitalize our digital marketing, our digital sales, because our sales apparatus has, for the most part, been a personality-driven event for the life of my company. Whole time, we've all been personality, face-to-face, coffee, back of a napkin, etc. And you can't do that anymore with stay-at-home orders, and all of our travel has been kind of rescinded, etc. So my sideshow, my little digital marketing initiative, has gone from being that funny project the millennial in the office is working on to one of the most important initiatives that we're working on. And so from my perspective, it's a little frustrating that I'm just now getting my emails responded to, and I'm just now getting taken seriously in the office about these kind of things. And, just because that's the way that you did it at your company for 30 or 40 years doesn't mean that that's the way that we're going to do it here, or the way that it's going to be useful here. And there's all those kind of things. And there's a part of me that's kind of like, hey, I did most of the groundwork so that we're not starting from scratch, going into this endeavor, with nothing. So we have at least the baseline done. So that's day one, and I haven't really had time to just kind of cool down. So yesterday was a day where I was not burned out with work and everything, and the quality of my play was significantly better. So anyway, that's going to be it for day one. As you can see, we're done, and I've gone long on time. Be safe. Call your loved ones. This is a weird, scary time, especially for our 401ks and for those of us who are on the front lines of this. So if you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, if you're anybody at all in that kind of line of work, for real, dude, my biggest hat tip to you. If you're working as a grocery person at all, bank teller, you name it, right? If you're facing customers, my hat's off to you. So I am well aware of the immense privilege I have for the fact that I can do my job from a computer in my boxers. This is a weird time. So we'll get through this. Go for a walk if you can. Get some sun every now and again, but for the most part, stay home. And I'll have day 2 of Chancellorsville up before the end of the week because it's already been recorded. It's a good battle. Sorry for the delay between these 2 videos. I've been getting slammed at work. It's unfortunately kind of an increasingly common epithet of late, but it is what it is. See you guys in the next one. This is Fiasco. Thanks very much for checking this out, and I can't wait for then. Bye.